All right, so we just recently covered solving quadratics by factoring, which means that we take it apart and we put it in intercept form so that we can find those x-intercepts right away. So let's kind of review that. Let's find the roots of the following quadratic by factoring. So write this down in your spiral so you can keep it as your notes. All right, so step number one is always to check if there's a GCF. Can I divide 2, 4, and 1 by the exact same number? And the answer is no. So then we go to step number 2 where we do A times C. So 2 times 1 is 2. And we're going to list all the factors of 2. And the only way to get 2 is 1 times 2 because the next number is a 2 and it's already there, so I know I've got them all. But what do you notice? Make sure you write this down. We need to get that middle number, the 4, and my only factors are 1 and 2. I can add them, I can subtract them. Am I ever going to get a 4? And the answer is no. So this is when we need a new strategy, okay? We either graph it and kind of estimate those values, or we need to find those roots by another method. So this is where the quadratic formula comes in. So a couple of things have to be present in order for you to be able to use the quadratic formula. Number one, the quadratic has to be written in standard form. So that just means that all the numbers in that quadratic have to be together on one side. Has to be present, okay? Another reason why you would use the quadratic formula is because factoring didn't work. So here's what the quadratic formula says. X is equal, so the x-intercept, right, that's what we're trying to find, is equal to negative b, or the opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times the a times the c, all over 2 times the a. So that's a big formula. The good thing is that it's given in your math chart, so you don't have to worry about memorizing it or anything like that. So first thing you want to do is identify your A, B, and C. So step 1, identify A, B, and C. So here's my quadratic again. Is it in standard form? Yes, it is. I have all my numbers together. And the number with the x squared is always your A. Number in the middle, including the sign, that's always your B. And then the last number, including the sign, is your C. So I'm going to just plug in some numbers here. So x is equal to the opposite of b. Well, b is 4, so the opposite would be negative 4. Plus or minus b squared. Okay, b is 4, so if I square it, that's 4 times 4. So I guess let me write it, 4 squared. Minus, because that's what the formula says to do, 4, that there's always a 4 there, times the a, which is a 2, times the c, which is a 1. All over 2 times the a. Well, the a is a 2, so 2 times 2. Okay, let me clean some stuff up, okay? So the first part stays the same. X is equal to negative 4, plus or minus. Now, I know that this part right here, 4 squared is 16. And this is all multiplication. I'm multiplying three numbers, so I'm going to pretend, you know, that that is the sign of the 4, which it is. That minus becomes its negative. So negative 4 times 2, well, that's negative 8. And negative 8 times 1, well, that's still negative 8. So I'm going to put right here, all of this is equal to negative 8. All over 2 times 2, that's 4. I can keep on cleaning some stuff up, so here we go. X is equal to negative 4 plus or minus the square root. 16 minus 8, well, that's 8, all over 4. And there you have it. Those are your x-intercepts. Now remember, a quadratic, it can either cross the x-axis once, twice, or none at all, okay? So right here, I know that the quadratic is crossing twice. Here's why. You see the plus and minus? One answer, you use the plus. So you write everything but with the plus. So negative 4 plus the square root of 8 over 4. Second answer, it's with the minus. So negative 4 minus the square root of 8 over 4. So there are your two roots. Now, if you really want to picture this quadratic and where more or less it's crossing the x-axis, we can take our calculator. This is a fraction, so I'm going to do alpha y equals enter. I'm going to put negative 4 plus second, okay, square root of 8 over 4. Enter. This is about negative 0.29. About, let me move that, negative 0.29. And then over here, I'll do the same thing. Alpha y equals enter. Negative 4 minus the square root of 8 over 4. And this is about negative 1.71. So there are my two roots. My quadratic is crossing, okay, if I picture this, if this is negative 1, this is negative 2, well, negative 0.5 is about here. The negative 0.29 is even less than that. So there's got to be some dot over here, and this one kind of closer to the 2. There's going to be my x-intercepts. So this is the quadratic formula for you in a nutshell, okay? So you're going to be given a handout. Looks like this. So I'm giving you the quadratic formula there. And we can practice a couple more together. Okay, so like the top part, it's really just getting you comfortable with identifying who is the A, who's the B, and who is the C. Okay, so remember that they always have to be in standard form first. So the first one, is it in standard form? No, I don't have all my numbers together, actually. I have x's and numbers on one side. I need to move everybody together. So I'm going to end up doing minus 9x, minus 9x. So x squared, negative 4x and another negative 9x is negative 13x equals negative 36. This still isn't standard form because I've got my negative 36 over here, so I got to move it. Move it. Move it. So now I have x squared minus 13x plus 36. Now it's in standard form. So now I can go ahead and identify the A. Well, the A is the imaginary coefficient right here in front, so that's a 1. The B is the middle number including the sign, so that's negative 13. And the C is the third number including the sign, so that's a positive 36. So there it is. So let's go ahead and use that, okay, to solve using the quadratic formula. So negative B. B is negative already, so opposite of that would be a positive. Okay, so this is going to become positive. So positive 13 plus or minus the square root of B squared. Well, that means negative 13 times negative 13. That would be 169. So I'll put right here, negative 13 squared. I'll clean it up right now. Minus 4 times A times C, all over 2 times A. So I have 13 plus or minus the square root. Negative 13 squared is 169, because a negative times a negative is going to be positive. And then negative times 1, well, that's a negative 4, times the 36, that's a negative 144. All over 2, because 2 times 1 is 2. Clean up the radical inside, so 13 plus or minus the square root. So now you got to subtract 169 minus 144, and that's 25. All over 2. And then don't forget to think of your answer as two separate ones. So the first one would be 13 plus the square root of 25 over 2. And the second one would be 13 minus the square root of 25 over 2. And we know that actually 25 is a perfect square number, so the square root of 25 is really a 5. So 13 plus 5 over 2, and 13 minus 5 over 2. So what's 13 plus 5? Well, that's 18. 18 divided by 2, well, that's a 9. There's one of your x-intercepts. 13 minus 5, that's an 8. And 8 divided by 2, well, that is a 4. So this quadratic is crossing at positive 9 and 4. Okay, and the good thing about being able to find your roots, your x-intercepts, is because then you can quickly actually come up with the equation, and then you can put it in y equals and do all sorts of things on the calculator. So I could take these and take the opposite of them, x minus 9, x minus 4, and I can put this on y equals. And that's intercept form, so I'll be able to see the graph, more of the table, etc. Okay. I want to do one more with y'all, which is this one right here. Okay, because this one, it looks like it's in standard form already. All the numbers are together on one side. So what's the value of the a? Well, the a is always the number next to the x squared, so that's the 12. B is the number in the middle with the x, including the sign, so that's negative 4. And C is always that constant at the end, the one that doesn't have a letter, but there isn't one because it's 0. Okay, so you would still do the exact same thing. You would use the formula. So again, the formula says negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So negative b, the opposite of b, well, it's already negative, so this negative and this negative are going to make it positive. So 4 plus or minus the square root b squared, well, negative 4 times negative 4, that's going to be a positive 16. Minus 4, this 4 is coming from the formula, a, and then times c, all over 2 times the a. Well, I know that anything times 0 is going to be 0. So this times 0, well, that's going to cancel all of this out, thanks to the 0. So 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 over 2 times 12 is 24. We know the square root of 16. That's a perfect square number. It's actually 4. So 4 plus or minus 4 over 24. And then don't forget, this really means two things. 4 plus 4 over 24 and 4 minus 4 over 24. So 4 plus 4, that's 8. 8 over 24, well, that's going to be a fraction, but at least I can simplify it by 8, and I'm going to get 1/3. My graph is crossing at about 0.33. Here, 4 minus 4, that's 0. 0 divided by anything, well, that's 0. It's crossing at 0 also. And you can verify by writing your intercept form equation and then put it in a y equals. Okay, so now you're going to use these notes in this video. Watch it again if you need to, and you are going to answer some questions on your own.